welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, today we're going to be discussing the budget. This is a document that had been awaited throughout the year. In fact, we were wondering what the government would take, what steps would it take to combat Corona, the impact of COVID, because as you know, it is something that also affected our livelihoods. Did the budget meet the expectations? Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister, of course, has touted this as a once-in-a-lifetime budget. But has it really been a once-in-a-lifetime document? Has it been Modi's 91 moment? Have the structural reforms and all the stuff that we talked about before the budget, has that been delivered? Well, I'm calling back a panel that I had actually had a discussion with this pre the budget. I'm going to ask them now what they feel about the budget. Joining me is M.K. Venu. He's the founding editor of the Wire.in. Dilip Cherian, he's a commentator, an image guru, and an analyst who's a familiar face on our TV screens. Dheeraj Nair, he is formerly with the Niti Aayog and now the chief economist at Vedanta. And Tejpreet Chopra, he was the former CEO of Southeast Asia of GE, and now he's got his own company of renewables and artificial intelligence, BLP. Venu, has this budget delivered all that you had hoped that it would?
So, Priya, to be fair, this budget delivered on one count, which is for the last, say, 10, 11 months, one of the pet peeves complaints of economists was that this government was being very, very stingy in terms of a fiscal expansion, right? While the countries around the world had been very liberal with a strong fiscal dose to revive growth. Basically, borrow and grow. That was a slogan around the world. India had been a bit conservative. So this budget, I think the government has shed that reserve, and it is a big borrow and grow budget. So to that extent, the
big borrow and grow or big borrow and grow?
Well, it's if borrowing is defined as kind of begging, you could argue that because you're pushing it on to future generations, right? So, and at the moment, Priya, because everybody is borrowing to grow around the world, the rating agencies are also relatively quiet. So they're not applying the earlier standards on debt to GDP ratio. Like India's debt to GDP ratio now could go up from, say, pre-COVID 70% of GDP to 90% of GDP in the coming months, right? So now that is for future. The bet is on growth. So everybody is hoping that we will grow and we will, over time, our debt to GDP ratio will come down. Now, the problem area for me is this budget has also been projected as the boldest reform, as you said, by this government of 1991 movement for Modi, based on what? Based on some mega kind of announcements like privatization of banks and insurance companies, government insurance companies, and privatize, basically sale of assets. Now, if you saw Nirmala Sitharaman projected sale of assets as Atmanirbharta. Now, this is a great spin that selling assets, lock, stock, and barrel is Atmanirbharta. Now, within few hours of her budget announcement, the evening, Swadeshi Jagaran Manch issued a statement, which I've written about also, that the RSS or the Sangh Parivar does not agree with sale of privatization of banks and insurance companies. And then Nirmala Sitharaman in some interview also said that she has to, on privatization of banks, which was projected as a bold reform, she said she'll have to build consensus by talking to various stakeholders. Now, this is a bit like farm laws. After you pass the law, you say we'll talk to stakeholders. I think it's better to talk to stakeholders and then announce, right? So I see some a lot of hurdles. I don't think within this year, LIC or some government banks will be privatized. And if that is the assumption in the budget, because you're raising a lot of resources through privatization, I think some of the budget assumptions could go horribly wrong. And number two, Priya, I'm a bit puzzled that some of the best known companies, public sector companies like BPCL, it's a blue chip by any standard. It's a blue chip company. Last 1 year, government tried to sell it, but no global genuine buyer has come forward to to sort of bid for BPCL. That's a big puzzle to me, because one narrative that I'm hearing is that globally, global capital is now shunning fossil fuel assets. So some of the big government assets like BPCL, oil companies or Coal India Limited, etc., may be regarded as kind of yesterday's assets, and not future, as in the context of climate change, etc. The new trends. So some of these things do worry me, because it's a major assumption and it's the boldest reform. If the boldest reform comes unstuck, the budget could sort of pose problems over the next 7, 8, 9 months.
Your first, takeaway from the budget, is it, there have been a lot of complaints as to what Venu has flagged off. The fact that your best way to raise money is through selling the family silver disinvestment. And we all know the track record hasn't been so far. BPCL, Air India, they've been on the market for so long and not been able to.
First of all, let me tell you this. I've studied and worked on PSUs very closely. They are not silver. Because silver and gold, the prices generally go up over time. The valuation goes up over time. And for PSUs, if you look at the last 10 years, every other company in India, small, mid, large cap, has grown with the boom in the stock markets. The PSUs are the only category which has fallen. Because, again, it's not rocket science. It's because they are not given autonomy. They don't have the independence to run their businesses. So, what are we holding on to these assets for? They're losing their value. If we had sold Air India, think about it. During the Vajpayee government, when it was first tried, we would have got good value for it. Now it's going to be junk, if at all it gets sold. Otherwise, it will continue to be a burden on taxpayers. Similarly, BSNL is a sick company now. 20 years ago, it would have got a good value, or even 15 years ago. So I think this logic of family silver, silver is of no use if it loses its value. So it's not silver at all. It's some kind of asset which is losing a lot of value over time. So I think it's absolutely the right decision, the bold decision to go ahead with it. Yes, the devil is in the execution, because there's a lot of work and a lot of controversy has followed also previous ones, which were many years ago. So yes, but at least we are now talking about execution, not intent. So I'm glad we've at least moved that. Now we are questioning whether the announcements will be done, but let's not shy away from saying that the announcements are bold. Apart from privatization, which of course is the big one, and let's remember also that FM used the word privatization rather than strategic disinvestment, which is what they used to say earlier, shy away from privatization. So apart from that, they have also set up a development finance institution for infrastructure. Now, infrastructure funding, where's it going to come from? You set up a particular institution. Bad loans of banks, we know they are a millstone around the neck. They've set up a ARC, AMC to manage those, right? The insurance cap has been raised. It was only 49% for FDI. It's now 74%. So foreign insurance companies can come in. So there are a whole lot of big ideas and big ticket ideas in this budget, which I have not seen in any of the other previous budgets of this government. So I think for this government, this is by far the boldest budget. And the second part I'd like to say is that it's also important to analyze what the FM did not do, apart from what the FM did, because there was a lot of pressure and a lot of talk for raising taxes, wealth tax, inheritance tax, stock market gains tax, COVID cess, all kinds of ideas were floating around. And I'm glad that the government, in the end, did not raise taxes. And I think there was a great temptation because they had to spend more. They have chosen to go the borrowing route, which is the wise way, because to tax either companies or billionaires or individuals at this point would have been defeating the idea of stimulus. So that's a very, very important thing. I think we're not giving the FM credit for and the government credit for not tinkering with taxes. Even the agri cess, which has been put in now on petrol, diesel, and some other commodities, that is in place of excise duty. So net effect is zero. So they've been very conscious about not raising taxes while raising expenditure. So I think what we were looking for really was a fiscal stimulus, which is there. I think maybe they could have, the only thing I might have missed was a little bit of, cash into the hands of the poorest, which could have been an additional stimulus. But otherwise, they've done the capital expenditure, they have not raised taxes, and they have come up with big ticket reform ideas, as I said, on disinvestment, infrastructure financing, insurance, privatization. So I think one budget cannot address every problem or every challenge India has, but this has gone a long way in terms of coherence and in terms of giving a clear vision for the next 5 or 10 years. So I would give it high marks on that front. If they had put a little bit of cash into the hands of the poorest, it would have been 10 out of 10, but yeah, we can still say 9 out of 10 for this particular budget.
Okay. Modi government's best budget then, Dilip, can we call it that? It may not be India's best budget, but it's a budget for the times and Modi government's best budget so far.
I tend to take the view that what Nirmala did not do is as important as what Rihanna did do. So Nirmala did not do the things that Dheeraj was worrying about. Uh, she did not also shy away from the word privatization. All of it great. Rihanna, of course, washed the budget away from the mainstream discussions because with such a 91 aspirationally oriented budget, there would have been a lot more crowing and cawing about it, but that hasn't happened because the space just got washed away. To not repeat the points that Venu and Dheeraj have made, and I agree with them, there's one aspect that I think needs to be seen from the slightly long-term point of view. In this enthusiasm with Atmanirbhar, there has been some raising of duties. I'm not saying that it's a huge duty wall we've created, but she emphasized the point that this was something that she was doing for Atmanirbharta. On the other side, you want global companies to come in and buy your rusty public sector assets. You want them to invest in your insurance assets. So you're welcoming global capital in a sense, but not welcoming global commodity flows. So I'm not sure whether this is a distinct signal, and maybe this is what is also being put in there to appease the voices of the elements within the government, the stakeholders who Venu referred to make sure that they see this on the one hand and that on the other hand. I think the privatization efforts are laudable if they were to actually happen. My guess is that the kind of spin that Air India has gone into is only one example. It's one ministry. It's clearly something that needs to go, and it's not gone yet. And what worries me also is that if it emerges that there is only one bidder for it also, which would make matters even more awkward for anybody. So I would say that what Nirmala did not do is go down the expected route of cesses and taxes and things like that, which would have been a further burden to the economy. But in not having done that, she's done well. And as I said, if it had not been for Rihanna, she'd have a lot more to talk about.
Well, the weekend is still here. I'm sure we'll get a lot of write-ups and play. Tejpreet, your sector, renewable energy, seems to have got a lot of push, in fact. So, and also artificial intelligence, two areas that you're involved in. So, are you happy with the budget?
No, thanks so much, Priya. I think all the points that Venu and Dheeraj said are absolutely spot on. I want to just take a quick step back and point out 3 or 4 things in terms of the way I look at it. While I completely agree with Dheeraj's point that the government has done a lot of actual steps for growth, I think the key word for me is growth. And I do agree the fact that by putting all the push on infrastructure, ARCs, PSUs, privatization is all fantastic. But at the end of the day, let's take a step back and think about the fact that the government didn't really have too many options. Our backs were against the wall post-COVID, and therefore we've just got to throw everything possible to start spurring the economy along as well. So I think to get that economy going, you've got to do 3 or 4 things. One, it's perception and confidence. So I think by all these signals the government is sending out, it's at least sending out a signal that we are confident and we really are keen to really start stimulating the economy for growth, number one. Number 2 is driving foreign investor confidence. At the end of the day, we want to generate growth. For generating that growth, we do need a lot of foreign capital. And how do we want to position ourselves as being the country that is stable from a regulatory perspective, have a growth agenda so we can attract all this capital. And I think from that perspective, the government goes a long way in making sure we send out the right signal. Number 3, the push on manufacturing, I think is absolutely in the right direction. I really do believe that post-COVID, when supply chains were broken around the world, corporate companies were looking for an alternative source to China. And I think we've done well to position ourselves as being that alternative place. So I really do believe through Atmanirbhar Bharat and through other programs, we should really make a push on manufacturing. And as a result of these three things, that's when you're going to have job creation. So given the situation, we don't have the kind of financial muscle that some of the Western countries have, but at least we are putting in together the right framework to drive that perception and growth to create the jobs we need. Now, coming specifically to your point, Priya, on renewables, my only point in AI and technology, I think what I'll just say is specifically from a budget perspective, there weren't that many big bang announcements. But to give the government credit, it's been a gradual push along the last couple of years to show their intent, both in technology and in renewables. But so therefore, the government has announced 1,000 crores to SECI and 1,500 crores to IREDA. There are a few increases in some taxes for, say, solar inverters, etc. But what I got really excited was the push on the hydrogen energy mission. So I think when they make these significant pushes to say hydrogen is going to be the next big push, or EV is going to be the next push, at least it shows our intent as a country to really push on renewables and really push on technologies such as AI, etc.
In fact, hydrogen is something a lot of people have been talking about, hydrogen energy. We are here discussing the budget. So Venu, middle class is feeling very ignored. Maybe it's because they should be relieved that at least the taxes didn't go up, what, as Dheeraj and Nirmala didn't do. But could something, given the circumstances, could more have been done for the middle class, the salaried class?
Yeah, in fact, Priya, if you remember, in 2019, when this government gave those huge tax cuts to the corporate sector, as part of that, in my view, was the first big stimulus, growth stimulus that they tried to deliver. It was a supply side stimulus, not demand side. That was one of the criticism. The corporate sector tax rate brought down to 25%, and for new investments, 15%. At that time, there was a narrative which was coming out of the government that the individual taxpayers will also get some relief going forward, maybe in the budgets, subsequent budget. So there was an expectation that individual would also pay 5% less, because today what is happening is individuals are paying effectively paying 35% tax, and corporates are paying 25%. So there is this sense among individuals, middle class, that why are we paying such a high tax rate? So I wouldn't have minded if she had brought down tax rates for individuals by, say, by 5 percentage points, and increase the fiscal deficit by 0.5 percentage point, because in any case, fiscal deficit is something that worldwide there is a license to increase fiscal deficit to drive growth. So another 0.5% would not have made any difference. So having said that, so this would be a disappointment. My other point, Priya, is that it is true that the government has increased capital expenditure a lot, by 30% plus. But what the government is not talking about is that its revenue expenditure has also gone up by the same proportion. As a result, the revenue deficit, which was around 75% of the total borrowings, you have, say, if you borrow 100, you spend some on revenue expenditure capital. So in previous year, it spent 75 rupees out of 100 on revenue expenditure, which is salaries, interest, your current expenditure, and roughly 25% on capital expenditure. The ratio remains the same this year. In spite of the big increase in capital spending, the ratio remains the same. So more or less the same, right? So
what does this mean?
This means that the economic theory says that if you borrow more to spend on capital, then you generate more new assets and employment, income and employment. So there is an output multiplier is much higher in capital expenditure.
Right.
In revenue expenditure, output multiplier is not there.
Got it.
So the ratio is, since the ratio is the same, so structurally there is not much difference. And this is a point made by Rathin Roy, also the economist, who's formerly part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. So that is one issue which I want to talk about. The other is,
Venu, I'm going to cut you short because we're out of time now. I just want to give everybody a chance for a second comment.
Yeah, sure.
Dheeraj, your second thoughts.
I think again, one of the challenges in this country, one of the problems in this country is that we all look for our bit of comfort from budget or economic policy. What is in it for us? But I think ultimately what is in it for the middle class? I mean, what does the middle class want? We want better life, more increments, more job options, and that will only come from growth. A 5% or 2% tax cut may put some money in your pocket today, but it's not your solution to your 15% increment or 20% increment, or for that matter, better job options. So I think the middle class should take a slightly more pragmatic view of this, that if growth revives, that is when the middle class does the best. And I think in any case, the middle class, to the extent that it is invested increasingly in equities and other financial assets, is doing all right. It's not doing badly. So I would think the only people who might feel aggrieved is the poor, because their prospects will take much longer to revive. I think middle class is fine. I don't think the middle class at this point should be expecting any tax cut. Growth is a solution to the middle class's problem. Growth is a solution to the government's fiscal deficit problem also. So I think what I'm happy about is that the government has realized that growth is really what comes first. Their revenue will automatically come back if fiscal deficit will automatically go down. All these things are dependent on growth. So once you solve that growth problem, whereas in previous times, governments used to try to solve the fiscal deficit problem by increasing this tax, that tax. Again, that's a very short-term view of things. So I'm glad that this time around, despite there being so much pressure on revenue and growth and everything, is focused on growth. And I think that's why it's, if you want to make a 1991 comparison, I think it's looking at growth and looking at taking India on a higher growth trajectory. We can argue about what's implementable, what's not implementable. Let's also remember that 1991 reforms were relatively low-hanging fruit compared to the reforms that need to be done now. Now you need to touch things like privatization, you need to do land, labor. These are all much more contentious than reducing import duties. Of course, memory is short. Industry had opposed even 91 reforms, if you remember. So it was not like everybody had said, this will lead to great things for India. There were a lot of skeptics even then. So I think reform and bold moves always have skeptics, and it will take a while for this to come into fruition. But I think the fact that they're focusing on growth, not revenue, coming up with bold ideas, bodes well. And we should not worry about which section got how much, middle class, this class, that class. I think that's not the right way, because if we get into that mode, then we'll always be a middling economy, because we'll all want a slice of the cake, but nobody cares about the size of the cake. So I think the middle class should invest in the size of the cake.
Dilip, your reactions to this?
Slice of cake and size of cake aside, there are other things which worry me. The so-called hype about investing huge amounts in the healthcare sector has been belied by those who've looked at the healthcare sector in greater detail. But what bothers me is that health plus education is still dwarfed by what you're spending on the home ministry. So, you're really talking of not doing the kinds of shifts that you could have done. Don't forget that unlike previous governments, this is a majority government which can pretty much push through whatever it wants. It's also been a time of the last year, certainly, if you leave aside the tiny sort of explosion outside the Israeli embassy, which is laughable. We haven't had to spend that much money on security and issues like that. So if you really want it, I think it's great that health has been given primacy in the panoply of all the things that Nirmala was talking about. But I think that you really need to spend more on health and education as a proportion of the budget. I'm not talking of in comparison with other ministries, and that was missing. Secondly, I am concerned about this, newfound enthusiasm with manufacturing. I'm not sure that whether India is going to be this great a manufacturing hub. Sure, a few companies with the right incentives will come in and replace parts of what they were doing in China. Bits of what needed to be done in the pharmaceutical sector have been done already before the budget. So don't forget that this is a sequence of things which have happened post-COVID, and it's good that it's happened. But globally, manufacturing is not going to move en masse out of China or suddenly into India, because the world realizes also that putting extraordinary emphasis on one asset in one location is also not the future. And distributed manufacturing, distributed processing, all of that is the talk of new world manufacturing in the future. So those are things that I think we need to be concerned about.
Your last thoughts, and also anything sector that you feel was ignored rather than, for instance, the travel sector. A lot of people are saying, hospitality, tourism, that could have got something.
Is that for me, Priya?
Tejpreet, yeah.
Okay, Tejpreet.
No, I agree. No, Priya, absolutely. I feel bad that I don't know why hospitality got ignored and aviation and travel got ignored, because they have been by far the worst hit sector during COVID. But let me just say a couple of points that I want to just pick up on what Dilip and Dheeraj had mentioned. One, I think a crisis is always an incredible opportunity you get once in a lifetime to clean shop. And therefore, this could be the best time to push through some of the most difficult reforms, whether it's labor and land that has been irking us for a long time. So I really hope that now we can take the next step to make that dramatic shift, number one. Number two, while the government, I really like the government's push on infrastructure, setting up the DFI with 20,000 crores, 5 trillion rupees for credit, fantastic. But why do I want infrastructure? It's not because just the roads or anything like that. It's because global capital will only start coming to our country for manufacturing if our entire supply chain cost gets reduced because of better infrastructure. So infrastructure benefits is not because of we as Indian citizens get a better right to work. It's because you're improving the fundamental capability to integrate into global supply chain. Number three, I completely agree. I want to just make one point to the point that Dilip said. The reason I would need to push manufacturing is that I think the steam of continuous growth in the IT sector can only go on till some extent, right? That's going to slowly peter out. If we want to truly create jobs for the vast market of our country, we need to push our local manufacturing. And the reason I really want to keep on pushing this is because we have 1.2 billion people in our country that can support the demand for local manufacturing. So whether we like it or not, we need to integrate ourselves with global supply chain. We have a big market in India. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to happen overnight. China did it over 20 years, but we need to make a push in that direction if we want to create the jobs that we need for future growth.
On that note, thank you all of you for this discussion, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed participating in it. Thank you all. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.